All right, let's just get right into it because today was a wild one. You've got this massive tug of war happening. I mean, on one side, you have a tech revolution so powerful it's pushing a single company toward a $5 trillion valuation. And on the other side, you have the world's most powerful banker, Jerome Powell, basically pouring a giant bucket of ice water on the whole party. This is the story of a market completely split in two, and it all happened in just a few hours. So if you just glanced at the market close, you'd probably scratch your head. I mean, look at this. The S&P 500, which is, our best gauge of the overall market, basically finished flat, didn't move. But the tech-heavy Nasdaq, it soared, hitting its 36th record high for the year. And at the exact same time, the Dow, which is full of those more old-school industrial companies, actually ended the day down. What is going on here? And that, right there, is the big question we're going to tackle. How is that even possible? How can one part of the market be popping champagne for a record boom while another part is clearly hitting the sell button? Well, to figure that out, we've got to look at the two giant forces that were ripping this market apart. So let's start with the bull case, the good news. The overwhelming story of optimism today was all about one thing, the AI juggernaut. It felt like no matter what else was happening, a few of these tech giants just refused to be held down. Their momentum was just incredible. And this is the number at the center of it all. $5 trillion. That's the market cap that Nvidia, a single company, officially crossed for the very first time. I mean, just to put that into perspective for a second, that is bigger than the entire economy of almost every country on the planet. Just wow. So what lit the fuse for this thing? Well, it wasn't just one thing. It was a whole perfect storm of good news. You had former President Trump hinting at a possible deal to sell their best Blackwell chips to China. You had the CEO forecasting $500 billion in revenue by 2026, which is just a mind-boggling number. And then there's that last point. One single company was responsible for 20% of the entire S&P 500's gains this year. That is some serious concentration. And listen, this wasn't just a one-stock party. The AI bulls had friends. Right after the closing bell, Alphabet, Google's parent company, dropped some incredible earnings. Their cloud business was up 34%. But here's the really important part. Their spending. They cranked up their forecast for AI infrastructure spending to over $91 billion. They're not just making money from AI, they're pouring billions back in, which tells you they think this boom is just getting started. And this quote right here from Nvidia's CEO Jensen Huang just perfectly sums up the entire bull argument. He's basically saying, look, what the Fed is doing with interest rates is noise. What we're doing is building a new industrial revolution. He sees this AI build-out as its own separate force of nature, one that isn't going to get knocked off course by a little change in Fed policy. But just as the AI bulls were celebrating, the bear walked into the room. And that bear's name was Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He was about to give the market a serious reality check that changed the mood for pretty much everyone else. And here's exactly how it went down. It was a classic 1-2 punch. First, at 2 p.m., the Fed announces a quarter-point rate cut. Okay, fine, everyone expected that, no big deal. But then, at 2:30, Powell gets up to the podium and starts talking. And within minutes, the market's certainty about getting another rate cut in December just completely fell off a cliff, dropping from a 90% chance to basically a 50-50 coin flip. And this right here, these three little words, this is what did it. A reporter asked him if another rate cut in December was a foregone conclusion. His answer was just blunt, far from it. And that was the signal. That told the markets, hey, the party's over. Don't expect us to just keep cutting rates like you want. So now you have these two massive opposing forces, the unstoppable AI train and the immovable Federal Reserve. Let's take a look at the aftermath of that collision, because this is where you can really see the market being torn in two different directions. The first and fastest reaction happened over in the bond market. And what's wild is how fast yields shot up. Both the 2-year and the 10-year Treasury yields jumped about 10 basis points. All that really means is that the market now thinks interest rates are going to be higher for longer. It was a direct response to Powell's far from it comment. And this slide, wow, it just paints the perfect picture of that divide. Over on the left, you've got the tech sector, home of Nvidia and Alphabet, up over 1%, just riding that AI wave. But on the right, the real estate sector, which gets hammered by higher interest rates, was absolutely crushed, down more than 2.5%. Same market, same day, two completely different realities. Now, to really get how divided it was, we need to talk about a quick concept called market breadth. It's really simple. It just measures how many stocks are actually joining the party. If lots of stocks are going up, that's wide breadth, that's healthy. But if only a few stocks are going up and dragging the index with them, that's narrow breadth, and that can be a big flashing warning sign. And this is the number that just tells the whole story. On a day where the S&P 500 finished flat, an incredible 398 out of its 500 companies actually went down. Let that sink in. That's nearly 80% of the market in the red. This was one of the narrowest market rallies in history. You literally had a handful of AI giants holding up the entire market while almost everything else was sinking. Okay, so that's what happened and why. Now for the big question. Where do we go from here? How do you even begin to navigate a market that's being pulled in two totally opposite directions? What should you be watching for? Well, there are three huge things coming up just this week. First, we get earnings from Apple and Amazon. Are they going to confirm this AI boom is real? Second, that US-China summit. Does a deal on those Blackwell chips actually happen or not? And third, we have the US government shutdown ending, which means we're finally going to get a flood of economic data that the Fed needs to make its big decision in December. So with that in mind, you can really see three potential paths forward. Scenario 1, the AI rally just keeps on trucking and overpowers everything else, with Nvidia leading the charge. Scenario 2, the Fed's tough stance wins the day, making safer things like a short-term Treasury ETF look good. And then there's the wild card. Scenario 3, if the US and China make a deal, that could boost industrial stocks like Caterpillar, which actually had a good day on that hope. So at the end of the day, it all boils down to two completely different stories. You have the bull case, which says AI is a real deal revolution and the Fed is just a temporary problem. And then you have the bear case, which says the Fed's reality check is exactly what's going to pop this dangerously fragile AI-driven bubble. And honestly, both sides have a really good point. And so that leaves us with the final question, really. You've got this heavyweight fight, the unstoppable force of the AI revolution versus the immovable object of the Fed's tightening grip. Which one do you think is going to win out? Where would you place your bet?